Welcome. This is our fifth in the series of Support Squad webinar episodes, and we are excited to be back. And this topic is super important and relevant this time of year, and it's talking about cancer and the holidays, and it's the impact that cancer has on the holidays and the impact that the holidays have on cancer. So really excited to have Kiara and Kara with me today to talk through that. I think we have a really rich set of experiences here to share with you. And the goal for this webinar is to really help sensitize the support community to things to think about when the holidays are coming and the stress and everything that already exists. And then when cancer is part of that experience, just what people are going through and the things that are important and the additional distress that it introduces into their lives. So excited to kind of help bring some clarity. And at the end of the day, I'm wearing my special shirt here. It says, be present, not perfect. That's what we're going to work on today, because that's really what it's all about. And I think a lot of times with traditions and holidays, you know, there's a lot of pressure to do everything to perfection, and we create more stress in our lives than we really need to. It's all about being with the people that we love at the end of the day, and making space for the time and energy that we want to put towards each other. So we'll help bring some clarity to that today. So before I begin, I just wanted to do a couple of housekeeping things. So this session is being recorded. You probably heard that when you logged in, but in case you didn't, it is being recorded. If you have any questions or comments you'd like to share, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A. That'll be super helpful, and we will either address them as we're having the conversation, or we will be happy to address them at the end. We've got a little bit of time allocated to address those at the end. And just as far as follow-up, if you have anybody else that you think might be interested in this, we will be sharing a link with the recorded video for replay probably later this week. So be on the lookout for that email and the link that'll come along with that. So with that, before we get started, I wanted to go ahead and give each of our panelists a chance to introduce themselves. So Kiara, we'll go ahead and start with you first. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience?
Sounds good. Hi, I'm Kiara Riga. I am 28 years old, and about a little over a year ago, I was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. So come a long way since then. My scans are stable, though I'll never be out of treatment or done with cancer. And my condition is still terminal. I'm doing pretty well right now. I also work with Abby at Be Present, doing some volunteer content creation and things like that. So I'm really excited to be here and share my patient experience.
Thanks, Kiara. We're very glad to have you aboard as well. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
Kara, how about you?
Yeah, I'm Kara Noskoff, and I am the Hospital Programs and Services Manager at Teen Cancer America, where we work with hospitals all over the country to help build comprehensive AYA programs. So we're really working with healthcare professionals to change the health system and bridge that gap between pediatric and adult oncology. Prior to that, I worked as a AYA child life specialist and AYA program manager, where I worked with the adolescent and young adult population in a pediatric setting, helping to build community and support and spend a lot of time at the bedside. So I'm committed to being an advocate and supporting this population.
Awesome. Thank you, Kara. And just a little bit about me. So I am Abby Westerman, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Be Present Foundation. And you'll hear a little bit more about the person that was the inspiration behind the organization. But we were really started with that experience in mind, and our experience as supporters, and just the challenges that I think everybody goes through. Even if you've had cancer or been a supporter before, every experience is different. And so really trying to provide some resources for the adolescent and young adult population, or AYA as we often shorten the term, because it just, there continues to be a lot of struggle with lives that are busy and lots of competing priorities, and really not having the experience to know what to do. So Be Present really has come into the space to really help that population understand the experience that their friends with cancer are going through, and help provide some context and just give them the tools and resources so they do feel empowered to stay, because social support and everything that comes along with it is just so important. At the end of the day, if you can be present for your friends, you will make a big difference in their lives. You may not have control over the outcome, but you do have control over the journey, and that's super important. So that's what we're all about. And this webinar is just one of the resources that we provide through the organization to help provide that clarity and just give people some helpful content and thoughts so that they can apply it to their own personal experience and really pave the way to a better support experience with their friends. Because at the end of the day, I think you have a much richer and stronger relationship if you're willing to put in the time and effort. So again, today's webinar is all about cancer in the holidays. Two things that we would never want to have to go together, but they do, and that's just a reality. And so making the best of it so the experience really is the best it can be in the most important and fulfilling ways that we want to experience the holidays. And so the way we're going to talk about this today is really kind of the way we structure all of the other webinars. And that is that, it's sort of this process, right? If you have an understanding of what somebody's going through, that's really helpful to kind of give you the understanding and empathy to at least hear where they're coming from. You may not know exactly what they're going through, but at least you can understand some of the experiences they're having. And then we're going to talk about communication, because communication is at the heart of every good and bad experience you have. If you're really good at it and you're open to all that good communication has to offer, the experience will be better. But when we fall and fail in terms of communication, that's when things really break down. So we'll talk about that a little bit today. And then the final part of it is just really based on that understanding and having that good, clear communication for what we need is organizing our circle of support. And so in this case, it's really about helping everybody else that's part of the celebration and the gatherings that we have over the holidays to just really understand how they can be helpful, what they need to be sensitized to, et cetera, just again, to make that positive experience for everybody. Because at the end of the day, supporters are just as stressed out about what they should or shouldn't be doing as the person that's going through cancer and is stressed out about what that whole experience is going to be. So I think we'll do all of ourselves a great deal of good if we could just take a breath and just lean into who we've always been before even the diagnosis happened. So that's what we're set up to do today. And again, at the end of the day, be present, not perfect. That's what we're going to strive for. All right, so the first part, which I just talked about, which is the experience. So depending on where the individual is in their phase of cancer, whether they're newly diagnosed, still going through treatment, as Kiara mentioned, some people will be going through treatment for the rest of their cancer experience. Others will be in survivorship, moving beyond cancer. So depending on what phase that they're in, and then of course there is, in our case, loss is also one of the possible outcomes. And so in each of those phases, we're in a different place with how we want to experience the holidays. What are the things that are causing stress for us? And so we're going to talk a little bit about each of those. So, the early diagnosis, survivorship and trying to move forward, and then with the grief and loss, and just what each of those experiences look like, just in terms of the things to be sensitized to. So to kick off the conversation here, Kara, I was going to start with you because I know you have worked in the hospital setting as as a AYA program coordinator, and then now with Teen Cancer America, you continue to help create a space for young adults who are in the hospital and trying to have a good experience, in a sterile environment. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that people should be aware of in terms of just the experience, what it's like in the hospital, and kind of those early days of diagnosis and going through treatment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think as you can assume, it's an overwhelming time. They're meeting a lot of new people. They're getting a lot of new information all at once. And so it's a lot to process. And I think the individual, the patient themselves, or their family, their network, their support network, they want to look ahead and they want to plan, but they really can't in that moment. You can't expect to know when you're going to be discharged. And so you can't make plans for a party or a get together, or, when you're going to celebrate a specific holiday, because things are very unexpected. And so adding that extra pressure of, okay, well, when is this round over? When do you get discharged? Everyone's wondering that. And so it's a time to just kind of really, I know we say it all the time, but take one day at a time and focus on the here and the now and what you can do in that moment. The hospital during the holidays is inundated with donations and visitors, and I think the holidays kind of remind you of a time to give and to be generous. And so oftentimes we think about the people that need more during this time of year, and so, which is an amazing thing, and I'm so glad that that happens, because it really does bring a lot of cheer and a lot of distraction, and it just kind of livens up the environment. But you're still, at the end of the day, when the day's over, you're still there with your treatment and your diagnosis, and you're still in a hospital. So it is a lot of highs and lows during the holidays at the hospital. I always say, I feel like if you're admitted during Christmas, or during this time of year, you're really sick. They really work very, very hard to discharge as many patients as they can so that they can be at home with their families. And so if you need to be in the hospital, especially when it comes to, being there on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, it's because, they were not able to get you home even for a couple days. And so we really work hard at trying to make it a joyful and warm environment. Especially working with the adolescent and young adult population, it was really important for me to give them opportunities to give, to receive, to carry on traditions that were important to them. But before you even get to any of those things, you have to make sure that that's what they're wanting. Maybe the holidays is really just too much for them to even think about in this moment, because they're just trying to manage this new diagnosis, and they don't want to celebrate. They don't want to be, they're not there yet. And so we can't force them to be joyful and cheery and participate in all these traditions, and the expectations of all of that and the pressure of all of that is just too much. So I think first and foremost, acknowledging, this time of year, acknowledging what's happening and giving them some choice back, because a lot of that's taken away when you're diagnosed with cancer. You don't have your privacy anymore. You're told when to show up at the hospital, or, which treatments you're going to receive, and it's on their timing. And as much as we can give our patients back some of the control, is the best way to go. So I think first and foremost, talking with your friend or family member, how do you want to approach the holidays? And it may change. One day they may, not want to deal with that, and then in a couple days they want to decorate their room, and they want to order gifts for their friends online or something, whatever it may be. I think there's a lot of creative ways that we tried to recreate that within the hospital, like allowing them to decorate their own room, and really getting out of their hospital bed and decorating a tree or decorating the windows, and getting to participate in that experience was always really important for the patients that I worked with.
Thanks, Kara. Yeah, and so Kiara, you had mentioned that, it was about this time last year that you were kind of in the thick of things as far as your experience goes, and now you're sort of entering your second holiday season in a different place, but still, dealing with a lot. Thought it would be great if you could share just some of your thoughts on how that experience was last year, relative to the holidays and what you were going through and maybe thinking about. And then now, as you think about where you're at in your treatment right now and the holidays and kind of how your perspective maybe has changed since that last experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think last year there was the cancer side of it, but then also the COVID side, right? Because it was pre-vaccines or anything. And so that it was already going to be a really different Christmas. Like my brother couldn't come down, we couldn't go over there, borders were shut, whatever. And so that was really tough because I think the biggest thing that I've kind of learned from this is you learn what's important to you through cancer. Not everyone does, and I don't want to put that pressure on anyone, but a lot of us do. And so for me, like I could care less about like gifts and all these things, but I love like experiences with the people that I love. And so that was really tough last year. And then the other thing I love is like food. I like love to eat, but I was neutropenic during the holidays. And so I couldn't, we had bought this amazing prime rib and then I like cooked it for hours in the oven. It was beautiful. And then I had to like put it on the stove and like cook it all the way through because I was too immune compromised to eat like rare meat. And so that was like really, really disappointing. And I think looking back, I wish I had just been like, you know, I'm just going to eat something else. So I'm not like sitting here disappointed with my dry meat, you know? So, but I think going into this year, it's a little bit easier. We're all vaccinated, but I do think that like COVID's not gone. We're still very much in a pandemic. And so I think that's one thing that you'll really want to talk to whoever you're supporting about. Like for me, one of my family members is coming and staying with us, and they wanted to see their friend in town, but that friend's family is not vaccinated. And we had to kind of have a conversation about, you know, what was I comfortable with? And I was so appreciative that they asked me. And I think that's really important because some people aren't nervous about being around people who aren't vaccinated. Some people are fine with huge gatherings. Some people just want their nuclear family. And I think, you know, all of us have been talking about giving the choice back to the patient. And I think you have to just kind of take whatever they say as you know, what you're going to do, right? Because there's nothing we can do about being immune compromised, but there is something we can do about, you know, FaceTiming in another house and putting that computer at a chair or something like that to make it feel like you're all in person without feeling uncomfortable with the immune suppression of it all.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the food because I think food is one of those things that for most cancer patients, regardless of where you are in the experience, it is something that you want so desperately to be able to have control. It's one of the few things you do have control over, right? You know, what you eat and what you don't eat, although the cancer sometimes has control over what you're allowed to eat. But I do remember that was one of the most important things for my daughter Kirsten's experience was being able to still enjoy she was definitely a foodie as well, loved food. The more the better, the more fattening the better, right? And sometimes it's really hard. And I think that's one of the things too, especially early in the experience, is that depending on your treatment and the side effects that you're having, you know, there's definitely things that you can't have, or you develop mouth sores or other side effects. Things just taste different, they smell different, and all of those things are certainly, like when you said, it's important to be asked, right? You know, you want to be involved in the conversation in terms of planning and what will work well, and some things that just aren't going to be the same this year, and here's how to make those adjustments. And so, yeah, like I say, all of our senses, you know, the smell and the taste and everything is super important and is impacted in different ways. And so really working to understand by just asking them, you know, what is it that is really kind of not pleasant for you right now, and make sure that we don't ignore those things, because again, those are important. You know, when everything else is kind of upended, having those few little things that are within your control, I think, are super important. Just to kind of add on a little bit about our experience. So I was the primary caregiver. My husband and I were primary caregiver for Kirsten. She was 20 when she was diagnosed the first time. So she actually, we kind of experienced two different kinds of holidays. And so the first holiday, we were actually back at home in San Diego, which is where we live. And Kirsten actually had been let out, just like you were talking about, Kara. They really do try to discharge patients if they can. And so Kirsten was in the hospital basically continuously for like 4 months, I think, at that point, and was just so desperate to get out. But she was neutropenic. And so the doctors really relented because they could see how much it was taking a toll on her mental health. And so we were so grateful that she went home. And I come from a big family. You know, Christmas Eve is always our big gathering experience. There's a lot that goes into it. I typically I am the one that's hosting. And so we were all very excited to be getting together. My sister was actually going to host it that year because that was a bridge too far for me to be able to do the hosting. But Christmas Eve, we were getting ready to go. And then Kirsten had found out she had a temperature and a fever. And unfortunately, that is, as everybody with cancer knows, that's one of the markers that says that you need to go into the hospital at least to make sure that it's not going to be something worse, because especially when you're neutropenic, it can turn into something really bad really fast. So it was devastating for all of us, especially Kirsten, because she really was looking forward to the food and the, you know, conversation and just the company. But she was also nervous. And the interesting thing about that was that, you know, we've sort of normalized the whole mask wearing experience thanks to COVID. And I think that was one thing that she really was dreading, was having to wear a mask around everybody else during the holidays, because I think she felt very self-conscious and oftentimes wouldn't wear it because she would want to be with her friends. And, you know, there was just such a stigma about it. And so I am grateful that for everybody's benefit and safety, I think, you know, the stigma has kind of been reduced. So so that was sort of the unfortunate side of the whole experience for Kirsten when she was still kind of going through treatment. And then you know, she passed away February the following year. And so our next holiday was our first holiday without her. And that was super hard, but in a whole different set of ways, right? Because again, you know, holidays, it's about traditions, right? And when you don't have the people or the experiences in your life that really make that joyful for you, or nostalgic, or whatever those feelings are that the holidays conjure for you, it can be triggering and really difficult. And so on that side, it was really, and we actually hosted. So I think I buried myself in all of the work for the holiday and didn't do a lot of asking for help and other things, because I think for me, it was just helpful to kind of have that set of things I could do again. But like I say, it was just one of those things where, from the supporter perspective, as the caregiver that's now, you know, kind of trying to put the pieces back together, giving that person space. I know there was a couple of times where I basically had to leave and go upstairs and cry in the closet, so to speak, because I was, you know, kind of losing my way a little bit, and compose myself and then come back down. But what we're going to transition to is sort of a segue here. The next most important thing is just really talking about that making room for all of the feels is just super important, right? It's not necessarily, it's going to be the commercial version of the holidays, right, with everybody smiling and laughing and joyful, but that's okay, right? It's the more important thing is about being in the moment and there with the person that you love, and either being quiet with them, or at least showing the comfort, or in our case, when Kirsten passed away, still being willing to talk about that person and not, you know, change the subject every time their name comes up because everybody's uncomfortable. So let's talk a little bit about that. And so when I think about communication, the thing I always think about is, okay, none of us are mind readers, right? So if we're not clear about what we need, or how somebody can help us, we will get what they think we need, right? And there's not always a match there. In fact, often there isn't. And so communication, again, is just super, super important, about being clear with what your needs are, and also just being, you know, flexible about how we, you know, go about our day and planning things, etc. So Kiara, I was going to have you start this time and just talk a little bit about the whole communication, because again, you know, the last holiday you were sort of in the midst of things and it was probably hard, and I don't know what the conversations were like or if people were actually pretty comfortable talking, and you seem like you're pretty open to having the conversation, so it was probably pretty easy. But just kind of the perspective on that end, and then sort of where you're at now, and how you want people to think about just the experience for you for this holiday coming up.
Yeah, so I think for me, the biggest thing is kind of taking my lead on things. Kind of like Abby, you said, if I'm going to bring it up, don't change the subject. But if it's something that I'm not talking about and you ask and I give a one-word answer, don't keep talking about it, right? I think the most important thing, like, hopefully as patients, we can communicate our needs, but sometimes we just aren't in a space where we can say, like, hey, I'm okay with talking about cancer for 10 minutes and then I want to just not have it be a thing. I listened to a podcast a while back where another woman with MBC like me was talking about how whenever she sees her friends or family, they have 10 minutes at the beginning of when they hang out and they can ask all of their cancer questions, talk about all of that stuff. And after that, it's not brought up again. And I think that works great for some people. For me, I feel like it's so entwined in every aspect of my life that, like, I'm going to end up talking about it. But then at the same time, that, like, the best thing I think about the holidays and being with people who don't have cancer is that sometimes I can forget for like a short while, and that's really nice. And so if it's something that I'm not bringing up, like, there's probably a reason for that. And I think that changes minute to minute, right? There's things that can trigger me that you would never think of. Like, I remember this past Thanksgiving, I was scrolling Instagram and everyone was talking about how thankful they were for their good health. And I was like, well, that's great, but like, I don't want people to not be thankful for that. Obviously, we're in a pandemic. Of course, you should be happy that you're healthy, but seeing that and hearing that constantly, it's just like, oh, they're glad they're not me, So I think there's a lot of things that could trigger someone that you would never realize it's never cancer related and might make them go inward a little bit and not kind of want to talk about those things. So I think just being mindful about where they're at and kind of meeting them at that place, I think, is the most important thing, at least for me.
Yeah, that's great feedback. And like you say, just sort of watching and responding to the cues, right? And not just being oblivious and continuing to push with whatever conversation or agenda you have. So Kara, I just wanted to check in with you. So again, going back to kind of the hospital experience and some of the things there about communicating needs and providing support and asking for help and being clear about what you do or don't want. Are there things that you would like for other supporters to know, I guess, and to think about in terms of just the hospital experience again, and how they can sort of manage and navigate that and make sure they're mindful of what the others are looking to have in support?
Yeah, I think you both nailed it. I think you have to be prepared to be flexible. And I think it's so hard because we all come into everything with our own expectations. While you were talking, Abby, I was thinking about my own personal experience. I lost my mom to cancer when I was very young. And I remember each holiday season after that was really hard because I was working so hard at trying to keep things the same. And I had this expectation that we were going to carry on with the same traditions. And after several years of working through that, I finally was able to just release that pressure of feeling like I needed to keep things the same, and kind of embrace new traditions, embrace that, whoever was going to be there was going to be there, and be present with who those people are, and that it was going to look a little differently, and that was okay. I think the same goes for the people that are in the hospital. I think that there are traditions and there are expectations and there are things that they're longing to have or be a part of. But everything is so up and down that we can't set those expectations or it doesn't mean that you don't have goals or you don't have plans for things. You want things to look forward to, but we have to accept when they change, and we have to be okay that, we're not putting that extra pressure on the patient because they're not in control of a lot of this. And so I think just being flexible and knowing that things may change. Also, like I said earlier, I think one day you may be scrolling through Instagram, Kiara, and seeing that all these people are grateful for their health, and it doesn't trigger you. And then the next day it does. And I think there's a lot of things like that where one day, they may, want things to be a certain way, and then the next day it's going to change. And so you have to follow their lead, and check in often. I think that, I don't want to speak for you, but I think that most AYAs would prefer someone asking like, hey, are you okay talking about this? Or, do you want to talk about this, or should we talk about something else? I would rather ask that than say the wrong thing. And but you are going to say the wrong thing too. So I think it's all about, I love that be present, not perfect slogan. And I'm going to use that often. I think it's so accurate in all areas of our life that, it's just about being there and being present and listening. We're not going to say the right thing every time. And you have to be flexible and follow the lead of that AYA that you care for, and kind of understand that it's going to be a roller coaster and a lot's going to change and things aren't going to look the same. And it's okay to grieve the loss of that. It's okay to say, this sucks. This is a really hard year, and this isn't how I wanted things to be. And to kind of accept that and sit in that for a little bit. And then when you get stronger and when you feel able to, then you can start thinking about the future and thinking about other things and what you are going to enjoy about this time of year and what you can control, and just kind of adjusting your expectations.
Yeah, I think for me, it was interesting, again, going back to the two experiences. One, when Kirsten was admitted back into the hospital during, on Christmas Eve. And I actually went up to be with my family. My husband stayed, so we kind of split the duties as far as the experience goes. And I just remember, I think I answered the same questions 100 times about, it really was focused on how is she doing? And of course, I was very concerned and was very happy to address that. But when I was thinking about just, in terms of, I know a lot of people that are going through cancer treatment or, have just gone through all that. And like you were saying, Kiara, sometimes you just want to break from talking about all that, because that's not, even though it defines some of the things in your life, it does not define you as an individual. And so if all people are talking to you about is your cancer and how you're feeling and everything, then they're missing out on all the other wonderful aspects of you as a person, right? And all of those conversations that you would have had if cancer hadn't been there, right? And so really making sure that, again, like everybody said already, following the lead. And sometimes we want to talk about it, and sometimes we really don't want to talk about it, or we'll answer questions because we know you want to ask, right? So go ahead and ask. Don't avoid the questions, because it's a natural part of conversation and being concerned and everything. But also, like I say, on the flip side, knowing when to stop or to change direction in the conversation. And then the other thing that I touched on before that I'll just kind of mention again, because I really do feel like it's important. And it's kind of interesting because by starting the organization Be Present, I'm able to comfortably talk about my daughter and the loss of my daughter and bring her up in conversations all the time. And if I hadn't, it wasn't the reason I started the organization, but it's been a really therapeutic and healing byproduct of starting the organization, is that I can still talk about her and bring her up in conversations without making everybody feel like either, geez, haven't you moved on yet? Or feeling uncomfortable because we're talking about somebody that's passed away. And I think just for everybody, just remembering, whether it's the friend in your life or the parent that's passed away, whether it's cancer or not, those people were important in our lives while they were here. And you don't want to close the book and put it on the shelf and never talk about them again, because number one, it makes you feel more isolated, right? And now you're basically like, well, you know, who do I get to talk to that, you know, with that about, you know, and remember all the good times and the things. And so it's really about focusing, because it can feel like you're the, you know, the downer in the room when you bring up the person's name and you can kind of read the room and everybody's like, oh gosh, here we go. And sometimes answering the question, so how many kids do you have, is really interesting for us as well, to new people that we meet. But I think just knowing how important it is for those people to still be able to talk. I mean, we move forward, we don't move on, right? So those people are still important in our heart and our memories. And so to be able to talk about them and to really feel like, you know, just bring them up like, hey, I remember, you know, Kirsten used to love to do this. I remember when she did that, you know, and to be able to have kind of a natural way to bring them up in a conversation without somebody saying, oh, so it's raining today, you know, to suddenly just completely change the subject because they're not uncomfortable, to welcome a little bit of uncomfortable because it's so important to the other person. And I'm not saying any of this is easy, right? Because I struggle too, you know, being on the other side of the fence. I've been on the other side of the fence many times, and so I know how hard it is. But just sort of just remembering in your mind that sometimes sitting with that uncomfortable for just a little bit, and how much it allows that person to just process and feel heard, is enough to really, you know, you've done your job. And like I said, it doesn't have to be uncomfortable, but talk about how they live, not how they died. You know, talk about how they're living, not how they're, you know, being sick as a patient or being treated or whatever it is. You know, really keep the important part of that, which is the person themselves, as the center, not the patient. And I think that's just a really important thing for people to remember, you know, anytime they're having conversations. You know, it's all about just kind of reading the room and talking about what they want to talk about, and being okay with uncomfortable conversations and emotions and the roller coaster that you might get on, even though you didn't have a ticket for it or whatever. It's about being present for somebody and making them feel less alone in the conversation. So I think all of that's really important, which leads to our final piece of the conversation, which is just really how we can kind of work together, and some tips and ideas and strategies that are maybe out there for keeping alive the pieces of tradition that are important to us and fulfilling to us, and assessing the stuff that just doesn't matter this year, or because, you know, we've been through this really difficult experience, you know, our eyes have been open to what's really important in life. And so I think when you think about the holidays and some of the traditions and some of the things that are very superficial and very focused on maybe things that aren't so important to those that have been through cancer anymore, it's an opportunity to reflect and clean out some of that stuff and really get to the essence of what's important on the holidays, which again, like we were talking about, is just being together, family and friends. Of course, it's all about having fun too. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm just as up for having fun as the next person. But when it comes to you're limited on energy, and you just, you know, there's those important people in your life that you want to be with. There's those important things in your life that you want to do with those important people. And the rest of it you could take or leave, right? And it's really determined by your energy level. And so I think really kind of reflecting on the important people, the important activities, and just being okay with letting the rest go or delegating, I think is really something important to think about, because you'd be surprised how welcoming people will be getting homework assignments and tasks to do, because they do want to help, right? But they just don't know how, they don't know how to ask, and sometimes necessarily they don't know how to offer. Back to that communication, right? It's really important to be able to share that. So one thing I'll share, and then I want to get the thoughts from the other panelists. But So for me, the one thing that I did for the Christmas without Kirsten that was really important to kind of keep her memory alive, and it's all about finding something about that person that you want to share, or that you want to keep that, a memory or tradition moving forward, or create some new memory that you can all have together. And again, it's really based on the person and the family and the friends that are all part of this. But the thing that I did for my family, the holiday after Kirsten passed away, so she loved those big, heavy, fuzzy blankets. I mean, we have like probably 50 in this house, I'm guessing, which is pretty sad. But anyway, but she just loved them. I mean, she'd walk around them. I think every photograph I've seen, saw of her, that she didn't let us take very many pictures, but every one of them had her with the blanket, either, completely wrapped, in her like a burrito or whatever. And then it was such a source of comfort and warmth. And, she was like Linus with her blanket, I guess, but not in the dependency, but it was just something that she loved her blankets. And so what I did as a gift for all of my family members was I bought a blanket for each of them at Christmas time. And they all opened it, at the same time. And really what that did is they all took it home. And so the blanket that's draped over the couch or whatever, that's just a remembrance of Kirsten, and the warm and fuzzy that kind of brings along with it. And so I think, there's opportunity to really think about those individuals that you love, and not just the ones that have left us, but the ones that are still with us, creating that new memory with them that you both can take forward with you, right? And so I think, that's just something that everybody has a different set of things they can think about for how to implement that. But that's just one example of how you can, create a new memory and keep that memory alive throughout the years. So Kara, I was going to just see what thoughts you had in terms of, normalcy is so important in the hospital, right? Especially during the holidays. So what sort of tips and strategies do you have for all of that?
Yeah, there's a few things that I've seen over the years. Again, I think adding some decor to the room really changes your environment. Putting some festive sheets on the bed so you don't have the sterile white ones, changing your pillowcase, all the warm, fluffy blankets make a big difference. Just putting up things around the room that make it feel like a different place. I think Christmas lights like change the environment big time. Not all hospitals will allow them, but you can always just put them on and then take them off when we walk out the room. But don't quote me on that one.
Ask for forgiveness later.
Yeah. And then, getting people out of their rooms as much as possible. And so, there are a lot of rules now within the hospital about visitors coming in, but there are some things that you can do. I know it sounds really dumb, but the elf on the shelf in the hospital really created a lot of joy. For all ages, I would have my young adults who were up until 2 a.m. anyway, help me put the elf into some crazy situations. And they loved, peeking out their door and watching the kids get up every day to go and look for the elf. And some of my young adults like to go out and look for it because they were walking laps anyway. And so it gave them something to do. Having your family bring in your favorite foods from home so that you're still getting that. I had a lot of families that loved tamales at this time of year, and so I ended up getting a lot of tamales, which I enjoyed. And so there is just a lot of just giving and sharing and people being together, even within the hospital. And so it's so great to see. I think there's a lot of things now virtually that you can participate in, whether it's with your own family or connecting with others within the AYA community. So there's game nights, there's holiday scavenger hunts, there's cookie decorating classes, there's cooking classes where you can be in different places, but you feel safe in your own environment. even going out light looking with some of your friends. You can get hot chocolate, bundle up, go inside your car, or you can walk around, whatever you feel comfortable and safe doing. But I think above all, just thinking outside the box and how do you recreate these memories in a safe way. It may look a little different. One thing that I saw once that I thought was really special. Um, Someone had gotten one of those advent calendars, and you can make your own or you can buy one. And in each day, so I think it's 25 days, they had 25 people write letters of encouragement and kind of their wishes for them for that year, and just messages of love. But they got to open a new one each day, and it's any way that you can find ways to stay connected. There's a book that we read when a family is going through loss, and it's about the invisible string, and just reminding people that we are all so connected, even if we're not in the same room. But there's this love and this connection, this bond between people, that is still there. You just have to look for it and feel it and find ways to feel it. And so doing things that make you feel closest to the people that you love, like those blankets, and wrapping yourself in those blankets that remind you of Kirsten. Like, there are so many ways. So we just have to take time to really think about them and think about what is special and what's most important. And a lot of times it's not about the big present and buying a new Xbox. It's about, words, or it's about being present, or it's about, just something silly that reminds you of someone. And so I think finding those small but meaningful ways to keep kind of that connection and that spirit going this month.
That's awesome. All right, so Kira, I'm going to let you bring it home with the last question, and then we'll kind of do a wrap up and Q&A if anybody has questions in the audience. But share with us kind of what, based on everything you've been through, I mean, just describe the perfect, no, we're not trying to be perfect, the ideal experience in terms of the holiday, and what you would like not just supporters to know, but also other cancer patients and survivors in terms of how to get there.
Yeah, so I think for me, it would be with COVID in the picture, a very small group of vaccinated family members. Once COVID's more out of the way, I would love to have more people around, but just like spending time to, like, I love being outdoors, and I feel like I like to exercise, and it really helps with my side effects. And so if we can go on like hikes or walk on the beach or walk the dog, like whatever, small little things outdoors, like that's my ideal. Like, I don't care about a ton of gifts. It's weird. I'm like one of those people who I really love giving gifts, but like I could care less about receiving them.
Yes.
So yeah, that's kind of, I think, what my ideal Christmas is. And I think, or holidays in general. And I think just for other supporters and patients, just open that line of communication. If the patient in your life hasn't opened it, go to them, see what they're comfortable with, what they want to have, and go from there. And then I think the one last thing that I meant to bring up when we were talking about communication is really like trusting that they've done all that they can or care to do for their condition. I've seen so many people that around the holidays, when there's holidays centered around food, especially, they sit down with their family and it's like, are you going to eat that pumpkin pie? Sugar feeds cancer. Or why are you eating that turkey? You should be vegan. Or all these, and like those are absurd examples, but everyone thinks that they have the miracle cure, and nobody does, because we wouldn't still be here. So I think respecting their choices and not kind of offering advice unless it's asked, I think is also really huge. Like, I think a lot of the times when I want to talk about stuff, I just want to talk about it to get it out there. And then everyone thinks I'm looking for advice, and I'm not. And then I have to kind of be like, well, I don't do that because of this. And it turns into almost a combative situation that it doesn't need to be. So I think that's the last thing I would say, is just not offering advice unless they're specifically asking for it. And yeah, just keeping that communication open. Don't assume that because on Monday they said they wanted all the presents, that means that that's what they want on Thursday. Keep an open line of communication about it, understand where they're at and meet them at that place.
Yeah, that's all great advice. Yeah, I think people want to be there the way you need them to be there, but yeah, you got to, it's a two-way street, right? Communication is a two-way street, and it's really super important to not assume everybody knows what you want or how you want to be treated or what's important to you. So yeah, keeping the communication open is a great advice. Okay, so one final question, and then if there's any questions in the audience, otherwise we'll wrap up for the evening. So in 30 seconds or less, each of us is going to just kind of share our top 3 takeaways that we hope people remember for this holiday. And we're talking about, kind of the holiday between Thanksgiving and New Year's, but holiday really is any event that reminds you of, a special time that no longer can be what it was because either somebody is ill and can no longer do things or because they passed away. So what are some takeaways, 3 or 4, whatever, that you would offer to the community to really adjust any holiday as they move forward? Carol, I'll let you go first.
I think the biggest thing is being adaptable and adjusting your expectations and being open-minded that good can come from that, and it may exceed your expectations, and change can be good, and it's okay to grieve the loss of what you wanted it to be or what you hoped it would be, but being open that it's going to look a little differently, but there's going to be some good in that too, and just being open-minded to what that is, and adjusting your expectations.
Awesome. Kiara, how about you?
For me, I think the biggest thing is keeping the line of communication open and meeting them where they're at. And then with that comes flexibility and understanding that it's not going to look the same as it always has, but good. Well, I'm taking words out of Kara's mouth now, but good definitely does come from that. Like, I think this is my first full calendar year with cancer, and I think it's one of like my best years. There have been some of the lowest lows, but some of the highest highs. And so I think like embrace both of those.
Great advice. Yeah, I think for me, I already hit on a couple of these, but I'm really bad at asking for help. I think that's one of the things I really remember the most, and I regret the most too, is depriving the people that want to help of the opportunity to help. There were many times where people are like, I can bring, soup to the hospital. I can bring this. I can help with this. And at the time, I just really felt like I was projecting weakness by accepting that. And of course, in hindsight, that is not what it is at all. And really, it does bring so much joy for people to have these tangible little things that they can do. Little is, in quotes, of course, because they're all big things, are all helpful. But wanting to be able to share whatever that special dish is that they make, and they wanted to bring it to the hospital for you, let them do it. If they want to help with wrapping presents, let them do it. If they want to help decorate your yard because you're too tired, let them do it. I think all of those things are just super important to really, let the ego to the side, right? And welcome all of that, because it comes from a place of love, not a place of judgment or any of that. So that's one thing. If I could go back and tell Abby from 5 years ago, I would tell Abby to say yes to more people that offered help, because the times that that I did say yes, I was always so grateful that I did. The other thing I talked about earlier, it's okay to have those moments of where you feel like you're breaking down. And if it means that you have to step away and gather your composure, it's okay to do that, but it's also okay to cry in front of people too. I mean, that's another thing that I was never really good at. It's like, oh my God, I'm starting to cry. I need to leave the room so that nobody sees this, right? And I think by being vulnerable and showing people kind of where you're at, I think it helps them understand more about what you're experiencing and what you're going through. If they don't see that side of you, it's probably just easier to not talk about it, or to, oh, well, she's, it seems like she's doing fine, so maybe everything's okay and we don't need to talk about it anymore. So I would say, be okay with stepping away if you have to, but also to be okay with, if emotions start to well up, to welcome people who want to comfort you and be with you in that moment and get you through that moment. And then the last one that I also talked about was just allowing people to always be present in the conversation, whether they're living or have passed on, whether they're physically present or, they couldn't make it because they can't travel or whatever. Providing those opportunities and creating plans that are inclusive of people that are still there, and conversations that and activities that build those memories or reflect on something that that person embodied that you want to just kind of keep alive in the celebration. I think all of those are the three things that come to mind for me during the holidays that I think are important. And just making space for each other is really, at the end of the day, what it's all about. Don't judge, just be. And I think you'll be surprised at how much that reflects back in a positive way to you if you're willing to do that. So so hopefully that was all helpful for our audience, and for the ones that are going to be able to watch this afterwards. Again, I think everybody's experience is going to be different, and you really just have to take all of this stuff that we've talked about today and just really think about what applies to your current situation. And at the end of the day, it's about really being mindful of that person that is experiencing change, and making them feel included, not isolated from the experience, and heard, and that you've asked for their input to kind of make that whole experience better. So I don't see any of the questions in the Q&A, and I think we're getting pretty close to our, time's almost up. Yes, we got 1 minute left. So in that 1 minute, I'm just going to say thank you so much to Kira and Kara for your time tonight and for sharing your wonderful insights. I think it's been just really helpful, and I know it's probably helped others with just kind of thinking through things. So I appreciate your time. Thank you to the audience for sharing your hour with us. I hope that for everyone, that this holiday is an opportunity to be present for each other and to enjoy each other, because the present is all we have, right? That's what we can embrace, and that's what we can really get our arms around. So my best wishes to everybody for the holiday season. We will send a link in an email once the recording is ready to be posted, and you guys can check it out or share with your friends. If you're interested in more information about some of the other resources we offer, please check out bepresent.org and or follow us on social, bepresent.org. And we hope to see you next time on our next webinar. So stay tuned for what's coming up. Thanks again to everybody for being with us. And again, Kara and Kara, thank you so much. Happy holidays to you as well.